A silent military hall where 32 cadets stand frozen. A creature bred for war prowls between them. Its breath is heat and thunder. One by one it studies each soldier until the air itself forgets to move. Then without warning the beast stops, turns, and sits before the only human in the room. The scanners flare with a single phrase, "Pack anchor found." From that moment, destiny changes sides. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us where you are watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. Under cold lamps in the Academy's main hangar, the floor looked like a lake of metal. 32 cadets stood in a straight line that could have split a sunrise. The only human among them, Jonah Reed, kept his hands still and his breathing slower than fear wanted. The Calteran Academy had seen 7,000 years of firsts, but never a human at final selection. Senior Commander Voris crossed the floor in deliberate steps that echoed like a drum. His scaled skin showed the dull shine of a veteran who had stood in many storms. Beside him moved Director Maraven, a quiet mind with 4 hands of instruments and one eye always on the next question. They stopped at a reinforced gate at the far end. "No one speaks," said Voris, voice soft but carrying. "You will be studied by a Vorin. Do not move. Do not reach. The creature will choose." Director Ven lifted a small unit, its light silver and steady. "Your scent mines were collected during rest cycle," she said. "The Vorin reads those patterns. The old way calls this true choosing. It cannot be faked." The gate opened with a hiss that felt like an inhale. The Vorin stepped out. Morvac, 3 meters from shoulder to ground. 4 powerful limbs, a spine ridge alive with faint light. 6 eyes arranged for the hunt, but not cruel. The creature's scales shifted colors like embers hidden under ash. Its front talons remained retracted, polite in the way storms can be polite before they cross a ridge. Morvac drifted toward the first cadet, a tall Norin who had never bowed to anything. Sensory tendrils waved softly, tasting scent and thought together. A pause, a look, then onward. The Norin swallowed, tiny and human in that moment despite armor and rank. One by one, Morvac visited each cadet. It stayed longer with a silent Valish pilot, shorter with a proud Solan tactician, longer again with a quiet mech student who always erased their footprints after drills. Officers in the gallery whispered neat numbers at first, then stopped whispering at all. Nothing about Morvac's choices fit any table. Jonah waited near the end of the line. He kept his thoughts simple. Not courage, not destiny, just breathing, steady, honest. Humans, he had been told, were adaptable and stubborn, not impressive words in a hall built for conquest. Still, he had come this far. He had learned to run in low gravity, to fight in silence, to see patterns in swarms. He had learned to stand where he was told not to stand. Morvac reached him last. The Vorin came close enough that Jonah could feel heat like sunlight through a window. The 6 eyes focused and did not blink. The tendrils traced the air near Jonah's face, then his neck, then over his shoulders. Time bent. A calm spread through Jonah's chest, quick and wide. Danger became a shape with soft edges. The Vorin stepped back, looked along the whole line as if reading the page once more from the start, then returned to Jonah and settled on its back limbs, steady and low. The floor seemed to take the creature's weight like a secret. A deep, gentle sound rolled out of Morvac's chest. The neural display panels along the walls lit with a single phrase translated by implants. Prime pack anchor. Someone in the gallery dropped a stylus. Someone else forgot to breathe. A cadet at the far end muttered, "Impossible," but the word found no purchase in the room. Marshal Oryx arrived so quickly it felt like he had stepped out of the wall. His cloak carried quiet authority, not decoration. He studied Morvac, then Jonah, then the display. His mandibles clicked once, not in anger, but in thought. "Confirm," he said. Director Ven's instruments sang to themselves for a long handful of seconds. "Confirmed," she answered. "The link signature isn't command control, it is alignment, resonance." She blinked like a scientist seeing a new color. "It reads as partnership." Cadets were dismissed. Some left fast, some slow, some with faces like doors. Jonah remained because there was nowhere else to be. "Step forward," said Commander Voris. "Place your hand on the neural ridge and let the link bloom." Jonah did as trained, but what arrived was not training. It was a second weather inside his head. Memory, not memory of movement under trees. Breath shared in chase. patience that spans hours like nothing. He sensed Morvac sensing him, and he felt no push to obey or demand to rule. Just a clear road between two minds. Director Ven's screen pulsed with new numbers. Synchrony 97 point something, she whispered, then laughed once, surprised at herself. We will need the Helios ring for this. The surface labs are too small. Oryx gave a single nod. Human, he said to Jonah, not unkindly. Your step has already changed the floor. Do not trip. On the way out of the hangar, Morvac moved to place its heavy form between Jonah and every open door. It was not threat. It was a promise. In the reflection of the glass walls, Jonah saw a shape he had never seen before. A person who was not alone even when no one else was close. He did not smile. He breathed, and the breathing felt like the start of a river. That night in a secured chamber, Morvac rested near the door. The ridge lights clung to soft blue. Jonah lay awake, listening to quiet machines and quieter thoughts. Through the link, a simple idea rose like dawn. We move together, Jonah whispered. All right, even though sound was not needed. Sleep came, careful and kind. Somewhere in the Academy's old bones, a hinge turned. The Helios ring orbited the Academy world like a crown that forgot to glitter. Ships drifted in patient lines, holding patterns that looked like handwriting. Jonah and Morvac stepped off the shuttle into clean corridors and the soft hum of 1,000 studies in progress. Crew members paused without meaning to. Eyes widened, not with fear, but with the shock of seeing a new answer standing in the hallway. Director Mara Ven met them at docking. We begin gently, she said, which meant many things. Grand Marshal Oryx and Admiral Kilos joined later, not to cheer but to measure. The room they entered was a testing arena dressed as a valley. Rocks, moving targets, shifting light. Transparent walls held the gaze of observers. Guidelines, said Ven, placing a hand-sized console near Jonah. Speak if needed, but let the link carry most of the work. Do not try to be commander. Try to be clear. Jonah looked at Morvac. The Voron's ridge glowed with a steadfast blue, like sky that trusts itself. New targets drifted into view. Drones with shielding, drones with misdirection, drones that pulsed strange signals to test nerves. Jonah did not raise his voice. He pictured a route along the valley's left side, then a feint that would pull the fastest drone into an open line. Morvac moved before the picture was fully formed, not because it was commanded, but because the picture felt right. They worked in a rhythm that could not be taught on a chalkboard. When Jonah pressed forward, Morvac flanked. When Morvac broke a line, Jonah found the seam and made it wider. Observers wrote furiously, then stopped writing because watching became more important than explaining. Increased complexity, Admiral Kalos said, and the field obeyed. The sky darkened to simulate a moonless hour. The drones learned and began to surprise. Jonah felt his breath speeding and let it be. Fear did not leave. It simply took a seat and watched them work. After a full run, Director Ven touched the glass with one fingertip. Again, she said softly, and again they went. At the end, barring small scratches and a single dent in a steel tree, the valley rested and so did they. Pattern classification? Historics? Ven hesitated, then answered. Partnership model. Mutual prediction. Traditional hierarchy absent. Efficiency higher than standard command control. Prove it's not a lucky pair, said Kalos. Not cruel, only thorough. Ven tilted her head. Release Luma. From another gate, a second Voron stepped into the valley. A little smaller than Morvac. Ridge light pale green, gaze quick and curious. Luma's record, Ven explained, showed 12 rejections in 2 cycles. The creature trusted no control link. Morvac approached Luma with caution wrapped in courtesy. Jonah stayed still, letting the two communicate in light and posture. The tension in the room crept up the walls. Then without theatrics, Morvac made a soft sound that felt like a door opening. Luma lowered at the forelimbs, not in submission but in greeting. The Voron looked to Jonah, moved closer, inspected scent mind with care, then gave a short, chiming breath. The link budded, gentle and thin at first, then steadier. Ven's console flashed as if relieved. Secondary bond formed, she said. No coercion, no conditioning. Tests resumed with 2 Voron. The valley became a choir. Jonah thought in shapes and timing. Morvac and Luma translated those shapes into motion. When one took a risk, the other covered the open space. When Jonah bent a plan mid-flow, they shifted as if they had prepared the change hours ago. The observers returned to their writing because now there was something new to teach. Kellos folded his arms. "Release Ark and Breck," he said. Two larger Voren emerged, colors threaded with red and amber, shoulders like cliff edges. Their entrance stirred the air. Old protocols said 4 Voren together meant weeks of staged acclimation and careful ranking. This took minutes. There was a moment near the beginning when nerves pricked and pride flashed. Good creatures rarely come without edges. But Morvac stood near Jonah's right, Luma near his left, and the message carried without words. "We are a pattern, not a ladder." Ark approached first, slow and thoughtful, eyes kind in a wary way. Breck came second, full of restless energy that tested every seam. Both inspected, both considered, both accepted. The links arrived like 4 streams choosing the same riverbed. The next hour looked like a blueprint for a better way. 4 Voren moved without elbowing each other for status. Jonah held the middle by holding nothing at all. He did not yank. He invited. He did not order. He showed. The field responded with complex puzzles that would have broken older teams. This team bent and did not crack. In the observation gallery, a pattern of whispers grew from the floor to the ceiling. This could change deployment. This reduces loss. This could teach us about the creatures themselves. Later, in a quiet room with views of the planet below, Oryx asked the question he had been saving. "Human, do you believe you are special? Or is your species suited to this?" Jonah took a breath. "I think the shape of my mind meets the shape of theirs in a good way," he said. "I think other humans might meet that shape too, if we show them a doorway." Director Venn nodded slowly, as if aligning a device. "We will explore that." What none of them said aloud, politics was listening. The partnership model that built grace in a valley could tear cloth in the council. Not everyone loves a new answer. Still, the data glowed. Still, crew who had seen war up close found their eyes softer when they watched the 4 creatures move as one with a human in the center who did not pretend to be a king. That night on the ring, Jonah lay awake again. The link carried calm and a little bit of joy from Morvac. Luma sent curiosity, bright as a small star. Ark shared steadiness, and Breck shared a restless promise of tomorrow. Jonah whispered, "We'll need all of that." And sleep arrived with the dignity of earned rest. The alarm came with no drama, only efficient words. Coalition units had rolled a new device into the Vidian sector. Voren teams under Calteran officers were losing their links mid-fight and falling into terrible silence. Ships burned, and the sky turned noisy with distress calls. It was not panic. It was a wide ache. Grand Marshal Oryx briefed in a room where the walls showed maps and the maps showed harm. "We believe their disruptor targets command control patterns," he said. "Your pattern may be immune." It wasn't a compliment. It was a key being handed over with the expectation that the door would open. A small stealth craft carried Jonah, Morvac, Luma, Ark, and Breck toward the ground. The pilot spoke in simple lines. "We drop you here. We draw fire. You disappear. You do what you came to do." Jonah wanted to argue and didn't. Some duties do not change shape when you look at them closely. The descent grew rough. The disruptor net brushed their hull like a cold current. They veered to a second landing point and skidded into thick forest. The team that brought them down set up to hold the line long enough to make the enemy look the wrong way. Jonah thanked them with the words soldiers use when there is no good way to say thank you. Then he and the pack slipped into the trees. The forest moved with quiet living things that didn't know about empires. Through the link, Jonah saw as the Voren saw. Morvac's world pulsed with scent in tiny shifts. Luma found paths that did not betray heat. Ark sensed patient patterns. Breck felt motion before motion arrived. Jonah stitched the inputs together, not as a commander with reins, but as a walker with many eyes. They found a scout team carrying small personal disruptors. When the devices hummed, the links did not shudder. The partnership sat stable as a stone. The Voren moved with care, disarming without spectacle. Jonah knelt over one device and listened to it with more than ears. The signal felt like a key that only fit the old locks. "We're different," he murmured. Not proud, just aware. With stolen comms, they learned the main disruptor sat under a ridge 16 kilometers away, wrapped in geology and guarded by layers of caution. They crossed that distance by thinking like rainwater. Where the ground rose, they slipped around. Where it fell, they flowed through. By dawn, they studied the base from a ridge of dark stone. The place looked like a factory of shadows. At the center stood a transmitter wrapped in plates like a storybook dragon. Jonah pulled the pack closer and shared a plan. 2 would ring the north with a crafted noise, 3 would slip south to the core. The pack agreed, not because he said so, but because the shape made sense. Dusk drew lines of purple across the compound. Luma and Ark created a distraction that sounded like a storm with opinions. Alarms spun. People went where people go when alarms spin. Jonah, Morvac, and Breck cut through the southern edge like a thought that refuses to be ignored. They found a side panel that Luma had marked earlier and opened it with patient strength. Inside, the corridors tasted of metal and worry. They met a squad ready with disruptors set to full scream. The wave pressed at the links like wind, but the bond held. Morvac moved with precision that left the air almost undisturbed. Breck pushed hard and fast, then pulled back to guard. Jonah's sidearm spoke only when it had to. Silence returned, quickly, and they took nothing from it except a straight line to the door they needed. The control chamber looked like a circle that forgot how to end. The transmitter core pulsed. Technicians ran patterns into terminals. Guards waited with hands that didn't shake. The next minutes were work. The pack did not dance. They made room. Jonah read the device's heart quickly. The power nodes were obvious to someone who had learned to see the long hinge in a problem. As he set charges, a terminal caught his eye. The interface wore a shape he knew from Calteran systems. It was not stolen looking. It was familiar looking. A project name flashed for a half second. Sundersky. Notes mentioned patterns that only old command control would trigger. The device had been built to answer a known song. There wasn't time to follow that thread to the spool. The door groaned under heavy steps. Jonah set the last charge and told the pack with thought light to move. They left in a line that curled and didn't tangle. Outside, Luma and Ark met them with a route to the trees. The charges sang. The core sang louder than planned, as if another power source had been waiting to be asked to go. The night lifted. The ground whispered it would hold everything that fell. When the light settled, the link sat steady in Jonah's mind. He checked each Voran with a quiet hello. Each answered. They sent word to a nearby unit to come pull them out of the forest. When the shuttle finally took them up, Jonah watched dark hills below and turned the new word in his thoughts. Sundersky. He understood only this much. Some hands inside his own house had touched the knife that cut his own house. He did not feel angry yet. He felt a need to understand. The pack rested around him like a living circle. Morvac shared a calm certainty that felt like, "We are not done." Jonah nodded and let the craft carry them back to the ring, back to answers that would not like being found. Back on Helios, the hangars hummed with good news. Voran teams across the sector had their voices back. Losses had dropped. A weight had shifted. Grand Marshal Oryx praised the outcome in a sentence that contained no sugar and needed none. Then he asked to speak alone with Jonah, Director Ven, and Admiral Kalos. In a room made for quiet decisions, the Marshal offered what sounded like an honor, but smelled like a leash. A new human-led division inside High Command, with Voran bonded under that branch's direct authority. Rich resources, fast rank, and doors that opened when you smiled at them. Jonah listened and felt the pack listening with him. Through the bond, their minds were clear. He thought of the terminal in the chamber, the word Sundersky, the shape of betrayal traced into sharp diagrams. He thought of the valley test where partnership made a new kind of music. He thought of the way Morvac always stood by doors without being told. "I can't accept that shape," Jonah said gently. He did not raise his chin. "I can help build something better. Make a wing that honors the link as partnership. Let humans train for alignment, not control. Give the wing autonomy from single-branch politics, and recognize Voran agency by giving them advisory presence in planning through their partners." Admiral Kalos shifted. more uneasy with novelty than opposed to it. Director Ven rested her fingers on the table, watching dynamics like changing weather. Grand Marshal Oryx's gaze cooled, not icy but winter clear. "You refuse a great offer," he said. "I refuse a dangerous one," Jonah answered. "The disruptor cut bonds built on control. Our bonds held because they are built on consent. If you try to force this into old clothes, you will break it. And if you break it, you will put lives back into the column we just shortened." The next minutes felt longer than most hours. Oryx weighed outcomes. Ven, to her credit, added data without decoration. Efficiency gains, loss reductions, training curves, stress loads. Kilos spoke about supply lines and the language of budgets. Jonah spoke about respect like it was a tool you could pick up and use. The pack, though quiet, sat with him in posture that said only, "We will stand where you stand." In the end, the decision came with conditions sharp enough to matter. The symbiotic wing would exist, answerable not to a single branch but to the combined military council, or an advisory input would be formalized in operations that used their unique gifts. Human candidates would be selected with care and gentleness, with refusal honored as wisdom, not failure. The wing would be judged on outcomes, not on who controlled it. Building it took months that felt like years and yet not enough time. Some candidates bonded easily. Most did not, which was expected. The academy built rooms for listening instead of only rooms for shouting. Trainers learned to ask, "What did you sense?" Before they asked, "Why didn't you do it faster?" The Vorian responded to this culture like fields respond to rain after a tight season. Missions followed. The Wings teams moved like conversations that stayed kind under pressure. They adapted mid-fight without waiting for a top-down cue. One operation went wrong when a landslip cut off a route. A human partner was injured badly. The Voran carried the partner out together, coordinated by a bond that needed no orders, then completed the objective with minimal harm to anyone involved. The report used plain words, but the story inside them felt like a bell-rung well. In council, old guard voices questioned giving advisory space to creatures. Jonah did not argue with volume. He brought results. He brought Voran insight spoken through partners, how the scent of panic moves through crowds, how patience can be a blade, how the land itself wants to help if you learn its grammar. Slowly, the council learned to hear what had always been true. Wisdom wears many shapes. Director Ven presented a paper with careful lines. "The Voran show higher cognitive complexity under partnership bonding," she wrote. "Not because we added it, but because our old methods had stepped on the hose. Even skeptics respected a clean chart. The wing did not fix everything. Politics still tried to place fingers on scales. Some units failed to bond and went home with no shame. Some missions hurt. Loss never leaves a room completely. But the new way bent the curve toward less harm and more dignity. 1 year after the forest and the furnace bright night, Jonah stood before the combined council with Morvac, Luma, Ark, and Breck at his sides. He gave numbers first because numbers open certain minds. Then he gave a small human story about a young partner who learned to listen, and by listening, saved a village by moving a fight away from water tanks. He finished with a request. Let our partners be in the planning circle as advisors every time their strength shaped the plan. Listening is not weakness. It is aim. Debate rolled, but it rolled forward. The measure passed by a margin that surprised even hopeful hearts. After the session, Jonah and the pack walked through a long hall toward a viewport where the stars looked close enough to pick. Crew passed and smiled without staring. The air held a lightness that was not victory exactly, but direction. Jonah placed his hand on Morvac's ridge. The link warmed with a steady glow that felt like trust made visible. Luma sent a bright spark of curiosity about new recruits. Ark shared a grounded pride. Breck, restless as ever, sent a tug toward the next training field. Jonah thought about where this all began. A cold hangar, a line of cadets, a creature sitting on purpose. He thought about a word on a stolen terminal and a choice in a small room. He thought about how a new road looks like empty ground until you walk it. He spoke softly, though the pack did not need sound to hear him. We keep building this the right way. No crowns, no leashes. Just a circle that holds. The pack answered with a feeling that swelled from all four minds at once. A chorus held in silence. It said many things at once. We see you. We choose this. We are strongest when we carry together. Outside the viewport, a transport slid past, lights blinking like a heartbeat. Somewhere below, a first-year candidate studied for a test that would ask more kindness than force. Somewhere above, a patrol drew a curve through safe space. Jonah turned from the glass and walked on with his companions. The floor felt new but steady under every step. The story did not end. It opened. A simple phrase rose through the link. Old in spirit, new in words, and settled where words become action. Packkeeper found. We move as one. Tomorrow waits.